Good morning, everybody. This is Amuse News. It is Friday, May 17th. We are live here. I'm back in my studio in Philly, and appreciate y'all joining me to just hear what's going on this Friday. I'm going to keep it quick. I'm just going to run through some stuff I've been reading and listening to and looking at, and just as a reminder, if you have things you think we should cover, you want to hear about stuff, just send us a note or hit us up on social. We are going to take you through some stuff, and I also want to just first of all, say yesterday I was going to go live, but then I went to visit with Adam Diltz at Elwood Restaurant in Fishtown here in Philly. And once we got set up, I realized that he made an entire meal, and I decided that it would make more sense to kind of eat and talk, and the video might have been a little hard to pull off. So we didn't go live, but the episode that I recorded with Adam is out now, wherever you find your podcast. We had a great conversation, and he showed me some amazing food. If you aren't familiar, so Elwood is it's a restaurant, an old townhouse in Fishtown, and basically what he's trying to do is kind of revitalize Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine, which is something that I'm not super familiar with. But he made me catfish and waffles, sturgeon with vegetables, and turtle soup. And we talked a lot about like the history of Philly food and how some of these things like turtle soup was a delicacy here, and catfish and waffles. These are things that this chef Adam, he could have started a new American restaurant, like so many others, but he's trying to kind of revitalize Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine, and has some recipes from his great great grandmother. And anyway, it's a really cool spot. It's a BYOB small restaurant. Definitely recommend checking it out. And I also want to tell you that I have guests booked for the next 2 weeks or so. We have cookbook authors, we have podcasters, we have an intern who's working on a story for Meat and Three that's going to come out next week. She's going to be on next Friday. I'm going to be talking to the Julia Child Foundation on Tuesday. I have a chef from one of Chicago's best restaurants coming on Thursday. I'm going to be talking to a bunch of restaurateurs. I get to actually go and visit a couple more restaurants, one in Philly, Jesse Ito of Royal Izakaya, which I'm really excited about, and Basu Ratnam in New York City. That's going to be in just a couple weeks. I'm at Inde. So I'm going to be out there exploring, learning, listening, and eating food, which is a lot of fun for me. So, okay, a couple things I want to tell you about. The Bear season 3 is coming. I think everyone knows that already. I've loved both seasons of The Bear, but all 10 episodes of The Bear's third season are going to drop on Thursday, June 27th. We don't have to, I won't talk about the plot too much here, but we left off, well, spoiler alert, we left off in season 2. Carmi was trapped in a fridge. Assume he got out, but this restaurant, The Bear, is going to open, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've really enjoyed this show, and again, I'm psyched about this. The people I've talked to in the culinary world, chefs, people who've worked in restaurants, are kind of split, like whether this show is showing the real struggles of the kitchen, or is it more of an entertainment vehicle that kind of glosses over these issues of sexism and racism and other issues that we see in modern kitchens. It does seem like some of the conflicts in the show are quickly dealt with, and then people move on. But I'm curious, you out there, people who work in kitchens, who've worked in restaurants, chefs, front of house, let me know what you think about The Bear. Super entertaining. And a friend of mine who's a huge fish fan is in the show, Chris Witaski, and I'm looking forward to seeing him back, and just psyched for them to continue this journey. So let me know what you guys all think about The Bear. A podcast that brought a couple worlds together for me that I listened to, Gastropod. The title was "Why Are Restaurants So Loud?" I've been thinking a lot about this, and I thought maybe it's just because I'm getting old, but I have noticed that restaurants seem louder than they did in the past, and so I was interested to listen to this. And in this episode, they talk about what's happening, and a couple of things that I found interesting. First of all, one of the things they point to is that there are fewer kind of soundproofing built into restaurants, not soundproofing like I have here in my studio, but soundproofing as in rugs, carpets, window coverings, wall coverings, table coverings. We're seeing a lot more minimalist restaurant layouts, right? We're seeing open, cavernous kind of steel and wood. We're not seeing a lot of more kind of cozy, restaurants with rugs and curtains and wall coverings, and that's part of it. But the gastropod team looks at the science of the sonic experience of eating and talk about whether restaurants are getting louder, and if so, why, and what it takes to create the perfect acoustic environment for dining, and how restaurants are designing playlists to make customers potentially order more food or eat faster. I mean, there's one part in there which I think we can all relate to, being out at a restaurant, and faster paced, higher tempo music is potentially makes people order more food and drink and eat faster, because that's how it works. It's kind of like being at a bar or a club. I think the more upbeat and fast the music is, the more likely people are to probably be drinking faster. So I thought this was a really really interesting episode. So one really awesome thing about this episode is that the fish and food world collide in this episode. Some of you out there might know this, but Fish's former manager John Paluska, he's featured in the podcast. He has a restaurant in Berkeley called Komal, which was the first restaurant to create an optimized oral environment using a system designed by a company called Meyer Sound. So the way they describe it is that um, the restaurant has an unprecedented ability to dynamically control the sonic ambiance of the space. This has been written about in the SF Chronicle. Fast Company. John has been on local TV talking about this, but with the touch of an iPad screen, Komal's management can maintain the desired level of energized buzz throughout the space while still allowing intimate conversations, regardless of occupancy levels. So the people interviewed on Gastropod talked about this and said that Komal has like this very perfect environment for eating and having conversations. So anyway, I thought that was a really interesting article. And next time you're in a restaurant and you feel like it's too loud, it's probably not just you. Okay, another article I wanted to flag for everyone, and again, these are all in the show notes, of course. The Bittman Project, Mark Bittman's website. There's a podcast, of course, and actually on, let's see what date, on May 31st, Mark Bittman is going to be my guest on this show, so I'm excited to talk to Mark Bittman. But this article is called "The Unseen Role of Prisons in Our Food System," written by Joey Ayala. It talks about how prisons use prisoners to run labor programs throughout the country. Some of these are mandatory with no payment to the prisoner at all, and those that do pay may offer between 10 cents and 60 cents an hour. And I mentioned that we're going to have an intern on next week, Jess Gingrich, who's going to talk about her story on pralines. And some of this ties in with that, the praline production and prisons in the South. So we're going to hear more about that next Friday. But a lot of these programs in prisons involve agriculture. Prisoners can be forced to raise cattle, keep bees, grow produce, maintain grounds on prison-owned farms, or they can be leased out to farms owned by private companies. And then, of course, whatever is made is sold and shipped off to some of the country's largest food companies. So the saddest part, of course, is that the prisons then provide inmates with highly processed and often terrible food. My wife works in death penalty work and spends a lot of time in prisons, and I think the food in particular is really horrible. So it's really sad that the prison labor generates estimate over $2 billion in goods and $9 billion in services every year in the country. There's only a portion of that that goes to agriculture, but it's worth highlighting a few key points here about prison agriculture, labor, and revenue. Between 2018 and 2024, about a dozen prisons that run cattle raising programs generated over 60 million in revenue from cattle. And in 2020, during the height of COVID, it was reported that 100 imprisoned women were moved from their prisons directly onto a warehouse owned by Hickman's Family Farm, a food company with whom the prison held a labor contract to work directly on site. So the contract was estimated to be worth just under $6 million a year. So the prisons are getting $6 million a year, and the prisons are getting free labor, and then they're still getting horrendous food. And our food system is set against a backdrop of this social hierarchy, of course, where poor people, immigrants, and imprisoned people take up a lot of space at the bottom of this hierarchy. And anyway, everyone should just read this article, and it's unclear what we should do about this. I think being aware is first, and then depending on where you live, you might be able to do something on the local level, but just something to be aware of. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about a few podcasts. So Snacky Tunes, I talked to Darren on this show last week. He has a guest, Josh Agren, who is a Philadelphian, native Philadelphian, like Darren, and I am a Philadelphian now by just by default for living here for so long. So anyway, Josh runs a place called Delco Rose Hoagies, a pop up in LA serving Philadelphia style hoagies. They talk about how Josh started this business, his quest to find the perfect bread, and the music he listens to while preparing sandwiches. And then the band Paint It Black is a band of Josh's, and so they talk about music, and there's a punk rock performance in there from the Immaculates. So it's a fun episode. Check that out. The Speakeasy has an episode, What's Not to Like. This week, they feature an interview with Caitlin Stewart, who runs the Instagram channel Likeable Cocktails. If you've ever seen that channel, you might want to check out this interview. Caitlin sits down with Greg and Souther to talk about being the first Canadian winner of World Class and building a social media presence during lockdown and kind of navigating this attention economy. I've been thinking a lot about this and about how food content created by influencers is such a huge part of food content that I see out there in the world. And we're here at HRN, we're trying to kind of understand that and understand where that's going and how we can help and kind of be a part of that. So I thought this was a pretty interesting one. Lastly, this very important news that a taco has been ruled a sandwich in court. And so just so everybody knows, if you were hanging on to try to figure out our taco sandwiches, on May 13th, a Superior Court judge in Allen County, Indiana, ruled that tacos and burritos count as Mexican-style sandwiches. So the backstory here is that the restaurateur Martin Quintana was a developer and owner of a place called the Famous Taco, and he was trying to open a new restaurant location in a Fort Wayne shopping center, Fort Wayne, Indiana. And when he was trying to open this second location, a condo association nearby objected, suggesting the eatery would violate the property's zoning policy, which prohibits fast food restaurants except for a sandwich bar style restaurant whose primary business is to sell made to order or Subway style sandwiches. So obviously that opens the door for fast food and established chains, like maybe if there is a restaurant called Subway, for example. But the court agreed with Quintana that tacos and burritos are Mexican style sandwiches, and the original written commitment does not restrict potential restaurants to only American cuisine style sandwiches. So that's kind of cool. So Mexican style sandwiches, I guess, is what we're calling tacos and burritos. But more importantly, this place called the Famous Taco will open a location in Fort Wayne is probably better than Subway. I would just go ahead and say, but there is no word on whether hot dogs are sandwiches or not. We're probably going to have to wait a little while for that one. So I just want to bring you those things. And again, next week on Tuesday, I'm going to be talking with the Julia Child Foundation, which should be really fun. They are a longtime collaborator of ours. On Thursday, I'm going to be talking to Erling Wu Bauer of Maxwell's Trading in Chicago. And next Friday, I'm going to be talking with Jess Gingrich, one of our interns who's working on this praline story that I mentioned. And the following week, I'm going to be on the road in New York talking to some chefs and Mark Bittman, the podcaster and writer. So I'm super excited about this show, and I hope everybody enjoys it. If you're listening, give us a review and share wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching, thank you. It's been nice seeing you out there. Always jump in on the comments, hit us up on social, let us know what you'd like to see. And if you have guest recommendations or things you think we should be covering, let me know. Otherwise, see you all next week. Thanks so much for tuning in.